Hello friends, welcome back to the homestead. My name is Constance and today we are doing the second of the home ec series. Last week we spent a good bit of time talking about the most common utensils that you would find in a kitchen, and today we're going to talk about pots and pans of all sorts. If you are brand new here to the channel and you would like to get more information about the home ec series that I am doing, I will put a link down below where you can watch the video where I shared all about it. So the pots and pans we're going to talk about today are pots and pans that you would cook with on a stove or ones that you would bake with in your oven. So when you are reading a recipe, often there will be information in the instructions telling you that you will need a certain kind of pan. And so the pans we're going to talk about today are the most common ones that you might see in a recipe. There are others that you will come across in recipes, but these are the ones that you will see the most. And so that's where we're going to talk about these in particular today. So the most common one that you will see is a saucepan. A saucepan just looks like a small pot. Some of them have longer handles. The ones I have these short handles, and they come in all different sizes. These right here are your most common size. It's a 2-quart, and then I think this one's about a 1-quart saucepan. And saucepans are used for making sauces, soups, pudding, anything that you would want to be stirring around. Generally, it's going to be cooked in a saucepan. And these are more apt to keep all of the liquid and the moisture in your food when you're cooking them, particularly if they have a lid. Some recipes will call for you to use the lid, some do not. Now, very much like a saucepan is one of these. This is a Dutch oven. And there's all different kinds of Dutch ovens. This one's sort of round shaped. This one is kind of a medium-sized one. And a Dutch oven is also often called a soup pot because you will often make a batch of soup in a pot like this. Dutch ovens or soup pots always have a lid that they come with, but the name Dutch oven actually talks about a very specific type of pot that looks like this. And a true Dutch oven would have a feature inside the lid where there are little points that come down all over the lid. And when something is cooking and you have condensation, the steam that collects on the top of the lid, those little points allows the steam to come together and then drip all over the food instead of just down the sides. So these aren't technically a true Dutch oven, but that's what we call them. The other most common pan that you will use on top of your stove is a skillet. And this is a cast iron skillet. I have skillets of all different sizes. I have little bitty ones, and I have ones that are twice the size of this one. And skillets are mostly used for sautéing or frying foods. Foods that you would want to have a large cooking surface would be cooked in a skillet, like pancakes or cooking meats or sautéing vegetables. Now, cast iron is completely made of metal. It's made of iron. And so not only can you cook on a stove with cast iron, but you can also bake in the oven with cast iron. And I have lots of recipes on my website where you can see me baking in cast iron pans. Now, moving on into the oven for baking. I have all sorts of baking pans. This rectangle one here, you can see has tall sides on it, and this is a loaf pan, and just like the name says, it is used for baking loaves. You could make pumpkin bread, you could also make pound cakes, loaves of sandwich bread. So anything that looks like or sounds like a loaf of something, you would make in a loaf pan. Now, these are sometimes called baking pans or cake pans. A square one like this is even sometimes called a brownie pan. because people often make brownies in them. This one is 9-inch square. You will often see recipes when they are calling for a baking pan saying specifically what kind or what size of a baking pan you're using. 9-inch square baking pans are one of the most common sizes that most people would have in their kitchen. Another very common size of baking pan is 9 by 13. And a 9 by 13 pan, you could make cakes, and you would bake all sorts of different things in this. Any kind of casserole would often be made in a 9 by 13 baking pan. This one is actually even called a lasagna pan because it's often used for lasagna. Now this particular baking pan is called a jelly roll, and it is very similar to a cookie sheet, but it has a little bit of a taller side on it because when you make a jelly roll cake, you need these sides to keep the cake batter from spilling all over your oven. Now a pan like this, a jelly roll pan, can be used as a cookie sheet. Anything that is big like this is often used that way. So if you've only got one baking sheet in your kitchen, then a jelly roll pan would be a good place to start because you can use it for many different things. And speaking of cakes, I'm going to show you two kind of special cake pans. Now this interesting looking pan is called a bundt pan, B-U-N-D-T, and the name actually comes from Buntkuchen, which is a type of cake that was made in Germany. Bundt cake pans often have sort of a design in them, and when you bake the cake and the cake comes out of the oven, you actually turn it upside down and then your cake takes on the shape or design of the pan that you bake it in. Another pan that you will sometimes see when you're making desserts is a springform pan. This is a round springform pan, and it can be used as a cake pan or a dessert pan, and it gets its name because on the side it has a latch, and this latch has a spring in it, and when you release the spring, the sides come completely off. So you can prepare a dessert in here, and then when it is cooled or chilled or finished being prepared, you can remove the sides off of it, and then you'll have your dessert right there, almost like on a little bitty plate. You will often see these used for cheesecakes. You will see them used for icebox cakes or refrigerator cakes. There's all sorts of things that you might see one of these pans used for, but usually desserts. And springform pans come most often in round shapes like this. You can find small ones, larger ones. You can also find them in a square shape. And the last pan that I'm going to share with you is a muffin pan. These are called muffin pans or muffin tins, and just like the name says, you would use these to make muffins or cupcakes. You could also use them to make little mini omelets and all sorts of fun little things. Anything that you would need a little cup-sized baking dish for. And these usually come in 6 count or 12 counts, where you have 6 little cups or 12. And that concludes the lesson for today. We went over the most common types of pots and pans, baking and cooking, that you would find in a kitchen or see in a recipe. And next week we will get started with our first how-to video, and I will give you your first lesson that you can work alongside with me. So that is it for today. Thanks for joining me here at Cosmopolitan Cornbread. My name is Constance, and I will talk to y'all next time.